You know that feeling of being completely empty inside, even when surrounded by people. I spent years serving at church, taking care of my family, helping everyone, until one day I woke up and didn't recognize myself in the mirror anymore. My name is Marcus. I'm 34 years old, and this is the story of how I almost lost everything because I didn't know how to say no. If you're also exhausted from carrying the world on your shoulders, stay with me until the end of this video, because what I'm about to share completely changed my life. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because every Sunday I bring reflections that will transform the way you live your faith. Let me tell you how it all started. I grew up in a traditional evangelical family, one of those where you learn from an early age that serving is the greatest Christian virtue. My mother was always that tireless woman at church. She led the women's group, organized events, visited the sick, prepared food for services. She was called Mother of the Church, and everyone loved her. I grew up watching this and learned that being a real Christian meant giving yourself until you couldn't anymore. At 15, I was already playing drums in worship. At 18, I became youth group leader. At 22, I married Anna, a wonderful girl I met at church. At 25, I was ordained as a deacon. My entire life revolved around the Christian community. And look, I'm not complaining about that. I loved serving. I loved seeing people being reached, lives being transformed. But there was a problem I didn't notice. I had turned service into armor. Every time someone needed something, I was there, whether it was dawn, my day off, or my wedding anniversary. The kingdom of God comes first, I would say. Anna started complaining gradually. "You're always there for everyone except me," she would say. I got irritated because I thought she didn't understand the purpose. "Christ gave himself for us," I would counter. "How can I do less?" I used the Bible as a shield to avoid facing what was really happening. My two children, 8-year-old Luke and 5-year-old Julia, started asking when I would play with them. "Sunday, Dad promises," I always said. But Sunday would come, and there was rehearsal, board meeting, lunch with visitors. Promises turned into lies without me realizing it. At work, I was the guy who took on all the extra projects. After all, work as if working for the Lord, right? I arrived first, left last. My boss loved it, but my body started sending signals. Constant headaches, gastritis, insomnia. I ignored everything. It's just stress. It'll pass, I thought. The church grew, and so did my list of responsibilities. Besides drums and youth group, I started coordinating the visitation team, helping with accounting because you're good with numbers, Marcus, and still being the official handyman for any technical problem. My cell phone wouldn't stop ringing. One day, on a Wednesday in June that I'll never forget, I was at prayer service. The pastor was preaching about Martha and Mary, that classic story from Luke 10. He talked about how Martha was so busy serving that she didn't stop to sit at Jesus' feet. And then he said something that pierced me. Sometimes religious activism is just an escape from real intimacy with God. I felt like he was talking just to me, but instead of reflecting, I got angry. He doesn't understand, I thought. Someone needs to do the work. I left that service even more determined to prove my worth through service. 2 weeks later, it happened. It was Friday night, my 10th wedding anniversary. Anna had planned a special dinner, just the two of us. She had asked her mother to stay with the children. Everything was prepared. But at 6 p.m. I got a call. It was Sister Conceição, a 70-year-old lady who lived alone. She had fallen and needed to go to the hospital. "I need to go," I told Anna. She looked at me with those eyes full of tears, mixed with disappointment, and said, "I knew it. I always know I'll come second." I responded with something I regret to this day. "Anna, Jesus said that whoever loves father or mother more than him is not worthy of him. That applies to wives too. I grabbed the keys and left. I took Sister Conceição to the hospital, waited for her to be seen, brought her back home, fixed everything. When I returned, it was almost 2 a.m. The table was the way Anna had set it, with the candles already melted. She was sleeping on the couch, still dressed. I couldn't sleep that night. The guilt hit me hard, but I pushed it down. I told myself I had done the right thing, the Christian thing. After all, wasn't that what Jesus would do? Help the widow, the lonely, the one in need? I justified my choice with scripture, with theology, with duty. But deep down, in a place I didn't want to look, I knew something was terribly wrong. The next morning, Anna barely spoke to me. She made breakfast, got the kids ready for school, went through all the motions like a robot. When I tried to apologize, she just said, "It's fine, Marcus. I understand. The kingdom comes first." But the way she said it wasn't understanding. It was resignation. It was the sound of someone giving up. I went to work that day feeling heavy, but I buried that feeling under a mountain of tasks and responsibilities. That's what I always did. Feel something uncomfortable. Just get busier. Feel guilty? Add another ministry. Feel empty. Serve more people. It was a cycle I didn't even recognize anymore. At church that Sunday, everyone thanked me for helping Sister Conceição. "You're such a blessing, Marcus," they said. "So dedicated," they praised. Each compliment felt good, like a drug. It validated my choice. It confirmed that I had done the right thing, or so I convinced myself. But that night, when I got home after the evening service, I found Luke crying in his room. "What's wrong, buddy?" I asked. He looked at me with red eyes and said, "You promised we'd go to the park today. You always promise." I had forgotten again. I sat on his bed, not knowing what to say. What could I say? That church was more important than him? That other people's needs came before his? I hugged him and said, "I'm sorry, son. Next weekend for sure." Another promise I probably wouldn't keep. Julia had stopped asking me to read bedtime stories. She would just ask Anna now. When I offered one night, she said, "It's okay, Daddy. Mommy does it." She said it so matter-of-factly, without malice, but it cut deeper than any accusation could have. I had become optional in my own daughter's life. The warnings were everywhere, but I was too blind to see them, or maybe too afraid to see them, because if I acknowledged what was happening, I would have to change. And change meant disappointing people at church. Change meant not being the dedicated servant everyone praised. Change meant facing the terrifying question, who was I without my service? My identity had become so intertwined with what I did that I had no idea who I was apart from it. Marcus the drummer, Marcus the youth leader, Marcus the deacon, Marcus the problem solver. But who was Marcus the man? Marcus the husband? Marcus the father? I didn't know, and I was too scared to find out. The following months were strange at home. Anna didn't fight with me anymore, and that was worse than the arguments. She had given up. She continued being a good mother, kept the house organized, but between the two of us there was an icy silence. We slept in the same bed like polite strangers. I dove even deeper into church work. If things were bad at home, at least in God's kingdom I was making a difference, or that's what I tried to believe. I accepted leading one more project, the Christmas campaign. It would be 40 days of events, culminating in a big celebration. It was the opportunity to show my worth. It was during this period that I started having panic attacks, but I didn't know that's what they were. I thought it was just tachycardia. My heart would race out of nowhere. I would break into cold sweats, had shortness of breath. The first time it happened during a service while I was playing drums. I had to stop in the middle of the song. I went to the bathroom, splashed water on my face, took deep breaths and returned. "I'm fine," I lied. My mother, who had always been my example of service, started watching me with concern. One Sunday after service, she called me to talk. "Son, are you okay? I see you running around all the time, and I don't see joy on your face." I forced a smile and replied, "I'm great, Mom. Just tired, but it's a good tiredness from the Lord's work." She was quiet for a moment, then said something I didn't expect. "Marcus, I spent my whole life doing what you're doing. And you know what I discovered? I was running away." "Running from what?" I asked, confused. "From myself. From facing my fears, my insecurities, my inner emptiness. It was easier to be busy taking care of everyone than to look inside and see how insufficient I felt." I was uncomfortable with that conversation. Was my mother questioning her own legacy? No, she must be having those age-related things, meaningless melancholy. I gave her a hug and changed the subject. The Christmas campaign was chaos. The budget exploded, volunteers quit, there were conflicts on the team. And I, as coordinator, felt like everything depended on me. I started sleeping 3-4 hours a night. I drank coffee like it was water. My gastritis got so bad that I was vomiting blood, but I hid it from everyone. At my secular job, I received a warning. My performance had dropped, deadlines weren't being met, I was irritable with colleagues. My boss, who had always praised me, called me in and said, "Marcus, either you take some vacation and recover, or I'm going to have to take more serious measures." I promised I would improve. But I didn't take a single day off. At home, Luke started having problems at school. The teacher called, saying he was being aggressive with classmates, something that had never happened. When Anna told me, I simply said, "Talk to him. You understand these child things better than me." She looked at me with deep sadness and left the room without saying anything. Julia. My 5-year-old daughter made a drawing at school. The teacher asked the children to draw their family. When Anna showed it to me, my heart sank. There was Anna, Luke, Julia, and an empty space. "What about Daddy?" Anna had asked. Julia responded, "Daddy is at church." But in the drawing, the church was a separate building, far from the house where the rest of the family was. That drawing haunted me, but I pushed it aside. I told myself that my children would understand when they were older. They would see that I was doing important work, God's work. They would appreciate the sacrifice. But deep down, I knew that was a lie I was telling myself. Children don't understand sacrifice. They just know if you're there or not. The Christmas event was approaching and I was unraveling. I snapped at volunteers for minor mistakes. I micromanaged every detail because I couldn't trust anyone else to do it right. I was surviving on energy drinks and adrenaline. My hands shook constantly. I'd lost 15 pounds. Dark circles under my eyes made me look 10 years older. Anna tried to intervene one last time. She sat me down and said, "Marcus, you need to step down from this project. You're destroying yourself." I laughed bitterly. "I can't step down. Everything will fall apart. They need me." She looked at me with such sadness and said, "We need you too. Your children need you." "I need you." "But you can't see that because you're so focused on being needed by everyone else." I dismissed her concerns. "You're being dramatic," I said. "It's just until Christmas is over. Then things will slow down." But we both knew that was a lie. There would always be another event, another project, another person to help. The treadmill never stopped unless I chose to step off. And I couldn't imagine stepping off, because then I would have to face who I was without it. The day of the big Christmas event arrived. Everything was ready. Stage set up, sound tested, food prepared. We were expecting over 1,000 people. I hadn't slept properly in weeks. I was exhausted, but I wore a mask of energy and enthusiasm. In the middle of the event, while I was coordinating everything backstage, another panic attack started. But this time it was different. My vision started darkening at the edges. My whole body shook. I felt chest pain radiating to my left arm. I tried to lean against the wall, but my legs gave out. The next thing I remember is lying on the floor with several people around me. Someone was screaming, "Call an ambulance!" I tried to say I was fine, that I needed to get back to coordinating the event, but I couldn't form the words. Everything went black. I woke up in the hospital. Anna was sitting next to me, holding my hand, her face marked by tears. "You had a nervous breakdown," she said softly. "The doctor said your body just shut down from exhaustion." I tried to get up, remembered the event. "Christmas," I started to say. She squeezed my hand. "Marcus, stop. Please stop." The doctor came in shortly after. He was blunt. "Mr. Marcus, your body is in crisis. If you continue at this pace, you're looking at a heart attack, a stroke, or worse. You're 34 years old, and your body is functioning like someone in their 60s under extreme stress. This is not sustainable." He handed me paperwork for medical leave and a referral to a therapist. "This is not optional," he said firmly. I stayed in the hospital for 3 days. The doctors ran all the tests: heart, blood pressure, blood work. Physically, I was destroyed. Advanced gastritis, beginning of an ulcer, extremely high blood pressure, signs of extreme exhaustion. But the worst diagnosis came from the psychologist the hospital sent: burnout syndrome with characteristics of generalized anxiety disorder. "You completely burned yourself out," she explained. "Your body has been crying for help for a long time, and you ignored all the signs." She recommended immediate leave from all non-essential activities and intensive psychological follow-up. I signed the papers, but inside I thought, this will pass. In 2 weeks I'll be back. When I was discharged, Anna took me home in silence. The kids ran to hug me with that unconditional love that only children have. In that moment, looking at my children, I really saw them for the first time in months. Luke had grown. He had a boy's face now, no longer that chubby baby. Julia had cut her hair and I hadn't even noticed. How many moments had I missed? The pastor came to visit me the next day. I expected him to comfort me, to say I had done wonderful work and to relax. But he was direct. "Marcus, I'm going to remove you from all your functions at church for the next 6 months." I felt like they had ripped away my identity. "But Pastor," I tried to argue. He raised his hand. "It's not negotiable. You need to recover and discover who you are beyond what you do." The first weeks were horrible. I didn't know what to do with myself. Sunday would come and, for the first time in years, I had nowhere to be, no function, no responsibility. I sat in the church pew like a regular visitor. It was strange, uncomfortable. My phone that used to ring constantly now stayed silent. I discovered that I had become dispensable very quickly. I started sessions with the psychologist. She asked me questions no one had ever asked. "Marcus, who are you when you're not serving anyone?" I had no answer. "How do you feel when you're not busy?" "Empty," I admitted. "And where does that emptiness come from?" I didn't know. In the following sessions, we started digging deeper. I talked about my childhood, about how I learned that love was conditional on performance. My father, who rarely praised, only showed approval when I brought good grades or stood out in something. "You have to be the best," he would say. "Mediocrity is not acceptable." I carried this into adult life and into my faith. The psychologist made me see something disturbing. I had turned God into a demanding father who only approved of me when I produced results. My identity was completely tied to my religious performance. I didn't serve because I loved. I served because I desperately needed to feel valuable. I started reading the Bible in a different way, without the pressure of preparing a lesson or message. Just reading, letting the words reach me. I reread the story of Martha and Mary with different eyes. Jesus didn't condemn Martha's service, but he pointed out that she was worried and upset about many things, while only one thing is needed. I read about Jesus himself withdrawing from crowds to pray, to rest. He who had only 3 years of ministry and all humanity to save would stop, sleep, rest, eat, prioritize moments with his closest disciples. Why did I think I needed to do more than him? One day I was reading John 15, where Jesus talks about the vine and the branches. Verse 4 says, "Remain in me and I will remain in you." No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. I realized that I had spent years trying to bear fruit without remaining. I was so busy doing God's work that I didn't have time for God. I talked to my mother again. I asked her about what she had said before about running away. She sighed and started telling her own story. After my father passed away 15 years ago, she dove into church activism to avoid facing the pain of loss. I hid behind Christian service for so long that I forgot how to simply be loved by God without having to earn it. She continued, "Marcus, do you know how many marriages I could have saved if I had paid attention to mine when your father was alive? How many real conversations we missed because I was busy with everyone except him? I was a mother of the church, but what kind of mother was I to you?" She cried and I cried with her. Anna and I started couples therapy. At first it was painful. She vented years of loneliness, of feeling invisible, of raising the kids practically alone while being married. "You were there, but you weren't present," she said. "The kids had a ghost father." Every word was a stab, but it was the truth. I apologized. Not that automatic apology of "sorry, I'll change," but a real apology, specifically acknowledging every wound I caused. Anna didn't forgive me right away, and I understood. "Trust is built with actions, not words," she said. I started doing simple things I had neglected for years. Having dinner with the family without looking at my phone. Playing with the kids without rushing to go somewhere. Really listening when Anna talked about her day. At first it was strange. I felt useless just being there. But gradually, I realized that presence is a gift, maybe the greatest of all. I started journaling, not about what I did for God, but about what I noticed about God. It completely changed my perspective. My faith stopped being about performance and became about relationship. The therapy sessions became deeper. We explored my need for validation, my fear of being ordinary, my belief that I had to earn love. The psychologist helped me see that I was running a race that had no finish line. No matter how much I served, it was never enough, because the emptiness I was trying to fill couldn't be filled by external validation. "Marcus," she said one day, "what would happen if you just stopped? If you weren't Marcus the servant, Marcus the leader, Marcus the go-to guy? Who would you be?" The question terrified me because I genuinely didn't know. I'd built my entire identity on what I did, not who I was. I started experimenting with rest. Real rest. Not just physical rest, but mental and spiritual rest. I would sit in silence without feeling guilty. I took walks without listening to sermons. I watched movies with my family without thinking about ministry applications. It felt wrong at first, like I was wasting time. But slowly, something shifted. The constant anxiety began to ease. The tightness in my chest started to loosen. If you're relating to this story, comment below, "I need to stop too." Let's create a community of mutual support. 3 months after the collapse, I had an experience that changed everything. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was on the porch of my house, just watching the clouds, something I hadn't done since childhood. The kids were at school, Anna at work, and for the first time in years, I was in silence, not the empty silence from before, but a silence full of presence. It was in that moment that I felt God, in a way I had never felt in all my years of religious activism. It wasn't anything mystical or supernatural in the dramatic sense. It was a deep feeling of being loved, exactly as I was, tired, broken, without any ministerial function, without producing anything. I started crying and the tears were of relief. God was there and he wasn't demanding anything. I remembered a song we sang at church, but that I had never really understood. Your grace is enough. Grace, unmerited favor, unconditional love. For years I had preached about this, but lived as if everything depended on my effort. I had turned the gospel of grace into a gospel of works. In the next session with the psychologist, I told her about this experience. She smiled and said, "Marcus, you're beginning to understand that your value isn't in what you do, but in who you are. You don't need to earn love, not from God, not from your family, not from yourself." She was right. I decided to do something radical, reread the Gospels, specifically looking for moments of rest, boundaries and self-care in Jesus' life. I was impressed. Jesus slept through a storm because he was exhausted. He said no to crowds. He withdrew from the disciples. He went fishing. He ate with friends. He cried openly. He expressed anger. He asked for help. He was fully human without being ashamed of it. In Mark 6, there's a part that deeply impacted me. After the disciples returned from an exhausting mission, Jesus says, "Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest." And the verse explains, because so many people were coming and going that they did not even have a chance to eat. They were doing God's work, saving people, healing the sick. But Jesus said, "Stop, rest." If that was necessary for them, why did I think it wasn't for me? I talked to the pastor about this. He confessed, "Marcus, church culture often glorifies exhaustion. The busier you are, the more spiritual you seem to be. But that's not biblical, it's sick." He told me he had created a new protocol at church. No leader could have more than 2 roles simultaneously, and everyone would have at least 1 month of ministerial vacation per year. When the 6 months of leave ended, the pastor invited me to talk about my return. "What would you like to do?" he asked. For the first time, instead of accepting any offered role, I stopped to think. I want to go back to playing drums in worship, just that. No leadership, no committee, no administrative responsibility. Just play and worship. He agreed, but made one condition. "You play every other Sunday. We need a sustainable rhythm." I accepted. And you know what I discovered? Playing drums that Sunday, without the weight of all the other functions, was the most genuine worship experience I'd had in years. I was there simply out of love, not out of obligation or to prove worth. The relationship with Anna improved gradually. It wasn't magical or instant. It was months of small daily choices, choosing her instead of the phone, choosing to be present instead of just existing in the same space. One night, after putting the kids to bed, she hugged me and whispered, "I feel like I have my husband back." With the kids, I established new rituals. Every Friday is movie night at home, just the 4 of us. Saturday morning is special breakfast that I prepare. I went to parent-teacher conference for the first time in years, and Luke's teacher commented, "So good to finally meet you in person." Luke talks about his dad so much. That filled me with both joy and sadness. Joy for the present, sadness for the lost years. At work, I established clear boundaries. Leaving time is sacred, unless it's really an emergency. I stopped taking work home. Initially, I was afraid of being fired or looked down upon, but the opposite happened. My productivity increased. I was more focused, more creative, more collaborative. I discovered that rest isn't waste, it's investment. I learned to say no without guilt. When someone from church asks for something, my first question is no longer, can I do this? But should I do this? They're different questions. I can do many things, but I should only do some. And that's okay. The transformation wasn't just internal. People started noticing. You look different, friends would say. More peaceful, some observed. Even my kids commented. One day Luke said, "Daddy, you smile more now." That simple observation from my 8-year-old son meant more than any church accolade ever did. I started attending a support group for burned-out ministry workers. I was shocked to discover how common my story was. Room after room of broken servants who had given everything until there was nothing left. We shared our stories, our struggles, our slow journeys back to wholeness. It was healing to know I wasn't alone. One of the most profound changes was in my prayer life. For years, my prayers had been lists of requests and reports of activities. God bless this event. Help me do that task. Make this ministry successful. But now I simply sat in his presence. Sometimes I didn't say anything at all. I just breathed and knew that he was there, and that was enough. I also had to grieve. Grieve the years I lost with my family. Grieve the relationships I damaged. Grieve the person I could have been if I hadn't been so driven by fear and need for approval. The psychologist helped me understand that grief was necessary and healthy. You can't move forward until you properly mourn what you've lost, she said. Anna and I renewed our vows on our 11th anniversary. It wasn't a big church ceremony, just us, the kids, and the pastor in our backyard. But it meant everything. This time, I made promises I intended to keep. Promises about presence, about prioritizing her, about being a partner, not a ghost. And I've kept them, one day at a time. The Christmas campaign the following year happened without me in leadership. I watched from the congregation as others coordinated and led. And you know what? It was successful. Maybe even more successful than when I did it, because the team was empowered instead of dependent on one person. The church didn't fall apart without me. That was both humbling and liberating. Today, a year after the collapse, I'm a different person. I still serve, but not out of desperate need for approval. I still help people, but not at the cost of my family and health. I still love the church, but I understand that the church is not my identity. Christ is. There's a phrase I repeat to myself every day that I want to leave with you. I am not what I do. I'm not how much I produce. I am not my ministerial achievements. I'm a beloved child, and that is enough. If you made it this far and you see yourself in this story, I want you to know it's not selfish to take care of yourself. It's not carnal to establish boundaries. It's not lack of faith to rest. Jesus himself said that the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. You were created to live, not just to serve. Martha was called back to what was essential. And the essential sometimes is simply sitting at Jesus' feet, doing absolutely nothing but being present. On that porch, I learned that God doesn't need my works. He wants my presence. He doesn't want my activism. He wants my heart. Are you tired? Allow yourself to stop. Are you feeling empty? Maybe it's because you're pouring out without filling up. Are you losing your family while saving the world? Remember, what good is it to gain the whole world and lose your own soul or your family? God won't love you more if you do more, and he won't love you less if you stop. His love is unconditional. The question is, when will you truly believe that? 3 things for you to do now. 1. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. 2. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. 3. Comment below which moment of this story touched you the most, and if you want a specific prayer for your situation, leave it in the comments and I'll pray for each one. See you next Sunday with another reflection. Until then, remember, you are loved, not for what you do, but for who you are. God bless you.